The jump clock hit 0 and the stars came back wrong. That's how I always describe it to people who've never made a combat transit. The stars come back wrong. The geometry shifts, the constellations you've spent 6 weeks memorizing in the approach charts are suddenly real and close and present. And for 3 seconds the bridge is absolutely quiet because every one of us is doing the same math. We are here, we are inside their space, and there is no going back through the aperture for another 40 minutes. Jump complete, Lieutenant Osei said. His voice was level. It was the voice of a man who had decided, weeks ago in the privacy of his own quarters, that he would sound like that when the moment came. All 7 hulls confirmed transit, said Chief Warrant Jaksabakova from the formation net. Corridon's mark, Peltier's answer, Sable Meridian, 2 escorts port, 2 escorts starboard. Formation is clean. Captain Adeyemi said nothing for a moment. She was reading the tactical board, and I was reading it with her from my station 2 meters to her left. The Veth outer orbital ring was exactly where the intelligence file said it would be, a loose crescent of habitat structures and weapons platforms at roughly 4 light-seconds distance, sitting in the dim amber light of the red dwarf that the Veth had named, in their own language, something that translated approximately as the blood that feeds us. We hadn't tried to improve on that translation. The Veth fleet materialized on sensors 40 seconds after we did. Not emerging from jump, they'd been holding position inside the ring, waiting.
18 contact.
Then 22. Then 29, as the passive arrays resolved the smaller hulls hiding behind the platforms. 29 confirmed contacts, Jaksabakova said. Largest signature is approximately 4 kilometers. 11 contacts in the 2 to 3 kilometer range. Remainder smaller. 7 against 29. The math was not comfortable, but the math was not the point. Hold position, Captain Adeyemi said. We held. I had read everything there was to read about the Veth sovereignty in the 18 months between first detection and this deployment. 6 centuries of recorded expansion. 41 distinct civilizations contacted. 40 subjugated. 1. The Drevry, a gas giant filter feeder with no concept of territory and no military to speak of, simply absorbed. The Veth had never, in 600 years of documented history, made contact with a spacefaring civilization that did not either immediately negotiate terms of submission or immediately run. Those were the only 2 outcomes in the record. The sovereignty's intercept doctrine was built entirely on those 2 responses. Their dominance display, the formation geometry, the targeting emissions, the specific frequencies of their active sensors designed to overload organic nervous systems aboard enemy hulls, had been refined across 4 centuries of use into something very close to a perfect instrument. It worked because it was built on a truth, prey scatters. The Veth fleet began to move. They were good. I'll say that without qualification. Their formation was elegant in the way that 6 centuries of practice makes things elegant. The large hull anchoring the center, the mid-range ships fanning into an intercept arc that covered every viable exit vector, the smaller hulls dropping low and high to seal the plane. They were closing at a rate that said we can reach you before you can form a jump aperture, and they were right about that, and they knew we knew it. The targeting emissions hit us 30 seconds into their advance, not weapons fire, but the specific sensor pulse that the Veth used to communicate a single idea to an enemy. We have painted you, we own you, the only question remaining is terms. Every console on the bridge registered the pulse. Targeting lock from the lead contact, Osei said. Acknowledged, Captain Adeyemi said. We held position. The Veth fleet continued to close. At 2 light seconds, they ran the dominance display in full. The formation tightened. The emission frequencies shifted into the range that their file said caused panic responses in mammalian and near-mammalian nervous systems, and the lead hull broadcast on all standard frequencies a signal that our translation suite rendered as, you are seen. You are counted. Declare your submission or your crew will be processed aboard our vessels. The word the translation suite used for processed was a diplomatic softening. The original Veth term was more direct. Our linguists had spent 3 months on that one word. Captain Adeyemi keyed the response channel. Her voice was exactly the same as it had been when she ordered breakfast that morning. Veth vessel, this is HSV Corridon's mark, carrying the diplomatic representation of the Terran Compact. We are holding position at these coordinates. We are prepared to receive your senior commander for formal contact proceedings at a time of your choosing. We will remain at these coordinates until that contact is made. She closed the channel. She did not address the targeting lock. She did not address the dominance display. She did not address 29 warships closing on 7. She addressed none of it, because addressing it would have been, in some fundamental way, a response to it, and a response was what the display was designed to produce. The Veth fleet slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. 2 light seconds out, their advance rate dropped by roughly 40%. I watched the contacts on the tactical board and I thought, not for the first time, they are running their protocol and getting the wrong output, and they do not know what to do with the wrong output. 20 minutes passed. The targeting emissions remained. The formation held its intercept geometry, but it wasn't closing anymore. On the formation net, Peltier's answer reported elevated EM activity from the lead Veth hull, internal communications traffic, our signals team assessed. A lot of it. More than you'd expect from a commander who was certain of his next move. They're talking, Jaksibekova said. Let them, said Captain Adeyemi. I had a theory about what they were talking about, and I kept it to myself. The Veth Huntmaster, the commander of their intercept force, whose name we'd learned from intercepted traffic was something rendered in our phonetics as Cathanova, had run the display twice now. The first time at long range, which was standard. The second time at 2 light seconds, full intensity, which was the display's maximum expression. It was the equivalent, in Veth military doctrine, of drawing every weapon simultaneously and pointing them at the enemy's command structure. In 600 years, the second display had never failed to produce a response. We had produced a response. The response was, we are prepared to receive your senior commander for formal contact proceedings. Cathanova was, I suspected, in a very difficult conversation with his subordinate commanders. The hail came 43 minutes after our arrival. Terran vessel. The translation was slightly rough. Their suite was working from the same signal intercepts ours was, building a model in real time. You do not respond to warning. Captain Adeyemi keyed the channel. We responded. We stated our position and our readiness for contact proceedings. A pause. You do not respond to warning. The emphasis was deliberate. They had a word for what they transmitted, and it was not the same word as communication. We received your transmissions, Adeyemi said. We are holding position. We are prepared for contact proceedings. Another pause. Longer. Then, you are 7 hulls. We are 7 hulls, she confirmed. We are 29. We counted 29, yes. The channel stayed open for 11 seconds with nothing on it. I had a sudden, vivid sense of what that silence sounded like on the other end. Not empty silence, but the silence of a room full of people who have stopped arguing because one of them has said something that ended the argument. The Veth Huntmaster was not stupid. He had 6 centuries of successful intercepts behind him, which many understood, at a level bred into his species across evolutionary time, the grammar of confrontation. He knew what every prey species knew, that when the numbers were 29-7 and the display had been run twice, there was only one rational response. He also knew that we had not given that response. And he was now, I believe, doing the thing that experienced commanders do when their model of the world stops producing correct predictions. He was revising the model. Not the tactics, the model underneath the tactics. The assumption about what we were. What are your weapons? He asked. Adeyemi glanced at me. I gave her nothing. It was a call. She looked back at the channel. We carry the weapons appropriate to a vessel of this class, she said. We are not here to discuss armaments. We are here for first contact proceedings. That remains our position. You have been painted by our targeting systems. We know. You understand what that means. We understand what it means to you, she said. We'd like to understand more. That's why we are here. The channel went quiet again, this time for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I watched the tactical board. The Veth formation had not moved, still holding at 2 light seconds, still in intercept geometry, but not closing. The targeting emissions were still active. 29 hulls, locked onto 7, and the 29 were the ones standing still. When Cathanova came back on the channel, something in his transmission's tonal register had changed. Our translation suite flagged it, a shift in what the linguists called speaker authority markers, the Veth equivalent of posture. He was no longer broadcasting from the same footing. You are the first of your kind we have encountered. Yes, Adeyemi said. You came into sovereign space. We came to make contact. This was the closest point of your sovereign space to our transit lane. We chose it deliberately so you would see us clearly. A very long pause. Then, we see you clearly. Good, she said. We hope that continues. The Veth fleet began to withdraw 40 minutes later. Not in the geometry of flight, the sovereignty did not flee, and Cathanavar would have known that whatever we reported about this encounter would be read by every other species in the region. They withdrew in the geometry of redeployment, orderly, facing us the entire time, the formation collapsing inward toward the ring rather than scattering. It was, in its way, a dignified withdrawal, and I thought Cathanavar had probably fought hard for the right to do it that way. The formal statement came through on the diplomatic channel 6 hours later, after we'd been sitting at those same coordinates for 6 more hours, and the Veth had spent that time in what our signals team assessed as the most intense internal communications traffic they'd ever recorded from a Veth fleet element. The statement was brief. It said, in essence, the Terran Compact is recognized as a contact-eligible civilization. First contact proceedings are suspended pending sovereignty review. The intercept force is redeployed. That was it. No terms.
No submission. No treaty.
Just, we are leaving, and we are calling this something other than what it was. Captain Adeyemi read it twice, then set it down on the console. Secure from contact stations, she said. Osei, get me a fuel consumption report. Jaxabakova, I want a full formation assessment before we stand down. Let's see what shape we are in. She said nothing else about it. I've thought about Cathanavar many times in the year since. I've tried to imagine what it cost him, not the tactical cost, not the political cost with his superiors back in the sovereignty's core systems, but the internal cost. He was a product of 600 years of a civilization built entirely on the logic of the hunt. Every instinct he had, every doctrine he'd been trained in, every successful intercept in his career had confirmed the same fundamental truth. Things scatter. When you show them the full weight of what you are, they scatter or they submit, and either response is a confirmation that the logic holds. We had not scattered. We had not submitted. We had sat in his targeting locks for 6 hours and asked him when he was available for a meeting. I don't know if the Veth have a word for the specific experience of a predator that has never failed to make prey run, and then, for the first time, doesn't. But I know what it looks like from the outside. It looks like 29 warships going very quiet, while their commander revises every assumption he ever made about the shape of the universe. That was the thing the display was never built to handle. Not defiance, not aggression, not a bigger predator. Just stillness. Just the refusal to be prey. In 600 years, nothing had ever refused.